This Thrive Loud episode is brought to you by Hinge Consulting, Allscope, and Animoto.
Think big, think positive. Never show any sign of weakness. Always go for the throat. Buy low, sell high. Fear, that's the other guy's problem. Nothing you have ever witnessed will prepare you for the absolute carnage you're about to witness. It's Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Today on Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
The biggest tech impact on real estate, and there's a tremendous amount of tech focus on real estate right now, but the biggest impact from my perspective is that the increased connectivity of social media and LinkedIn and things like that means that everybody has a much clearer understanding of who the other parties are.
Get ready to Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond, and today on Thrive Loud, we have a co-head of CBRE's alternative investment practice, which represents hedge funds and private equity firms for their real estate concerns. This gentleman is often quoted in the Wall Street Journal, New York Post, New York Times, and many leading industry publications for his expertise in the hyper-competitive New York City real estate market. We're going to have fun today chatting with a true master connector, a great sales pro, and an all-around great guy. Thrive Loud listeners, Ben Friedland. Ben, how are you today?
Hey, Lou. Thanks so much for having me on.
So this is excellent. One, because Ben just informed me that he's been binge listening to Thrive Loud and getting up to speed on all the great guests. And I want the listeners to know that this is a really cool thing that I like doing. I like getting a little tactical with people that have really excellent perspective in not only how they sell, but also dealing with the large institutions and really heavy hitters from a different space. We have a lot of entrepreneurs who might deal at different levels. Ben's covered the gamut. And I think that is a great way to learn a little bit about you, Ben. I want to hear a little of your career and how you got into the line of work you did. And from there, we'll have a good conversation. That sound like a game plan for us?
Sure. So I've been at the same firm, CBRE, for almost 20 years. And I know, sort of in the modern day work environment, that's a long time for someone to be somewhere. But I found a home earlier in my career. And, I've always really liked it here. CBRE is a Fortune 200 company, so it has tons of resources, but also as a broker and as an advisor, you're also in a sense running your own practice. So it's actually a great marriage of the two, where it's an entrepreneurial endeavor with the Fortune 200 company backing me.
Ben, did you start off in the same division, or did you matriculate across the company over the years you've been there?
Yeah, so I've always been doing the same thing, which is advisory brokerage work. And what happened was, it's always a combination and a lot of skill and luck, and really a lot of luck. When I started, the people that I worked with focused on high end. And so I was doing, as most junior brokers do, small high end deals, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet, 4,000 feet. And what happened was, just as timing would have it, this is when a lot of hedge funds were just getting going. And so I represented a lot of the principals of these firms right when they got started, did a good job for them, earned their trust. And as they've grown over the last 20 years, my practice has grown along with it.
So along these lines, and just to help paint the picture, you have established a relationship with hedge funds and private equity firms. So you're not only helping to set them up for real estate, but the investments of the companies, that their portfolio companies, if you would, as well, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's been a big growth really in the last 5 years, because it takes a lot of labor, and I had to bring on the tools to help me with that labor. So if you're a private equity firm and you buy Burger King, and you want to do an analysis of, hey, if Burger King's, and I'm making all this up, but if Burger King's 20,000 locations globally, are there locations that they should sell, that they should double down on? That type of due diligence, only massive firms can really do for them. So we've been helping a lot of the largest private equity firms in the world before they purchase something to do some due diligence on the real estate aspect of that purchase. And then once they buy it, what is the best way to optimize that portfolio.
To help people get a perspective, because you're on two sides of the coin in the seat you sit on, many times it's an ability to buy the property that people are looking at. And in addition, they're sometimes getting rid of and moving it. Do you also help on the sales side of this as well, not just on the acquisition side?
Yeah. So specifically for the hedge fund and private equity firms themselves, I'm absolutely helping them find and negotiate and secure their space, which in Manhattan is 95% of the time is a lease, not to buy. And the same on the disposition side. Most of the time here in New York, it's a sublease, not a sale.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask the question from someone who's on the outside of the real estate industry, but is very much connected to a lot of this. I, as many people know, work in New York City. I've been in just about every building there ever is, working around for different clients. And the way people work today is changing. There are tons of shared office spaces, WeWork spaces. There's startup companies popping up just about everywhere. And there's that mesh of that between the well-established organizations and companies. And obviously, in New York City alone, real estate is very expensive. And this is true across the world. And a lot of people work mobilely. A lot of people work at home. In your world, from the space that you're in, give me a little overview of what's going on in the business work environment today, because this is something that is changing the way that your business has probably had since you first started 20 years ago.
Yes, so that's a great question. And there's, I would say the biggest sort of impact on everything is it all comes down to talent retention and talent recruitment. So before, if you were a hedge fund or private equity firm and you paid employees and potential employees a good salary, you had a great shot of securing the talent that you needed. Now, that same talent is looking at LinkedIn and Facebook and Google, and they're going to those offices and they're seeing a younger vibe. They're seeing, scooters around and laundry and food and all that stuff. And so what has happened is these established older firms or even younger boutique financial service firms, they've had to reevaluate and look at their space, not from the perspective of, okay, how much does this cost and, how many employees can I fit, to how do I make this a work environment where millennials spend, a lot of their day at the office? How do I make this an environment where they want to come, where it makes my company more attractive to them, or at least on par with these other tech companies that they're meeting with as well?
So this is an interesting take. At the time of this recording and sometime throughout the year of 2018, the following things I know have happened. Google spent $2 billion buying the Chelsea Market building, which is down in the meatpacking district, for those that are not familiar with New York City. WeWork spent something like $800 million and bought Lord & Taylor's office space on Fifth Avenue. And they're converting these into, that's obviously an example of a shared work environment with WeWork and a company taking over this real estate. How much of this investment is these companies just basically figuring out ways to maximize and diversify their own investment portfolio versus accommodating the work need and the demand that's out there?
Yeah, so I would say when Google bought 111 8th Avenue, which was where they really planted a flag here in New York, that was a seminal moment in New York City real estate history, because what happened was that part of town, meatpacking, all of a sudden became extremely popular. It was headed that way, but Google bought the whole building and basically occupied it themselves. And as leases rolled, they wouldn't renew them. So all these other cool companies that wanted to be in that area, like Nike, for example, had to go find space that made that area even more popular. And that has not diminished. Historically, Midtown was the most expensive part of New York City. And now there are certain sections of Midtown South, Flatiron, that are now the most desirable parts of Manhattan to be in.
All right, Ben. So here comes the fun question that I've been waiting to build this in. When you work with your clients, do you get into understanding not only what their financial investment needs are for it, but do you understand a little bit about maybe the culture, whether it's New York City or other cities that you do business with and helping to get their clients to find the real estate? How much do you get to know your customer better? Because I know that one of the things that people have spoke highly about you is your ability to connect with your customer to really understand their specific needs. Tell me what you do to establish that strong connection with the clients that you have to meet their needs.
Well, I would start by saying that, and this actually goes back to an episode when I was binge listening to yours, number 59, Robin Dreek, about the code of trust.
Yeah.
And without trust, you can't have anything. You certainly can't be an advisor to someone. So the first thing that I do is work to establish trust. And, historically, the best way to do that has always been, if you know someone that knows that person, that can go to them and very directly say, hey, I trust Ben in this space. If you have a need, you should talk to him. That is, there's no other way to get to trust faster than having that intermediary vouch for you. Mm-hmm. So once I've done that, yes, I try to, the more I understand about a firm, the more I can help find a solution that's optimal for them. There's sort of two things in terms of understanding them. One is the culture, as you said, which, I get a feel for by talking with them and being in their office and understanding A, how they work, and B, how they'd like to work, and give them some examples of some cultures and setups that they may not have considered before. And then there's been an entire industry that has popped up called workplace strategies. So here at CBRE, we will bring in a workplace strategies team that basically says, okay, if we're going to figure out what type of space you need, we need to understand exactly what everyone's doing all day. And it gets very extreme where they'll have sensors on desks to see how often someone is actually at their desk, or how many conference rooms are being used and how much per day. And then all of that data is synthesized into a report which says, hey, these telecommuting employees, they don't need their own desks. We have 5 boardrooms. We only need 1 boardroom and 10 breakout rooms. So you really get granular on exactly what a company's doing. And that's what gets the principals of these firms so fired up, is when you can say, A, we're going to impact your culture, and B, we're going to get a space for you that optimizes how your specific company works.
I love that. I love that you're using the information and really matching the needs. Anytime that we're taking data and bringing it together, it works. Yeah. I want to get an understanding, because you are in probably one of the most competitive markets in the world. That's the real estate market, the commercial real estate market in New York City. Can you share with our Thrive Loud fans and listeners some of the best practices for salespeople in the role that you're in? Because you are truly in a space where everyone is fighting for every inch of turf, if you would, around this city. How do you compete in such a market, and give some of the things that have helped to make you and your organization successful?
Sure. Well, I would start by saying that, yes, this New York City real estate market is beyond competitive. And when I talk to other salespeople who aren't in the same exact game that I'm in, they're always surprised and relieved that they don't have the same level of competition. There are groups I remember calling on that would say, you're the 5th person to call me from your firm today. Wow. So how do you separate yourself from that pack? So early in my career, it was really cold calling, unglamorous work. I would foot canvas buildings. So literally this is pre 9/11. I would go into a building. I'd go floor to floor. It was before iPhones. I'd write down who was on every floor. I'd then go back, do some research, find out who the principals were, their phone numbers, and call them. What I have found that has happened, the biggest tech impact on real estate, and there's a tremendous amount of tech focus on real estate right now, but the biggest impact from my perspective is that the increased connectivity of social media and LinkedIn and things like that means that everybody has a much clearer understanding of who the other parties are. Mm-hmm. So what that means is that when I'm looking to find to secure a new client, one way or another, with the information available, I'll be able to find that intermediary who will vouch for me. And that's what a lot of the smart business solicitors are doing now to get new business. And as a result, cold calling in environments like this are really dying out, because there's too many people who are doing it sort of what I would call the new way, and connecting directly.
And connecting directly, have you found, when you first get in front of a potential client, maybe walk through the listeners, because I know this is important. You have a limited amount of time, and you obviously everyone has a limited amount of time. What
Yeah.
what is the way that you're able to establish the trust that you know is so important relatively quickly?
Yeah. I'd start by saying these are the most, in many instances, the wealthiest people in the world and the most time constrained people in the world. So the first thing that I do is I ensure that absolutely nothing that I'm doing is fluff. When you think of sort of the old school salesperson, kind of like a steak dinner to take someone out to close the deal, I don't do any of that. I would start by saying that relationships get you in the door and value is what keeps you there. So when I'm walking in to meet with one of these people, they've already gotten the vouch for me. So I will not start it off with small talk or anything that sort of like delays what we're trying to get to. I'm there for a reason. So I never take anything off the shelf. All of my presentations are prepared specifically. And one thing that I'm just a huge believer in, and I think the whole world is going this way, is that no one wants the big presentation books. No one wants, there was an old sales tactic where you make something seem so complicated and you're the only one who can figure it out. So that's a reason to hire me, right? Unless you hire me, you're going to make a bad decision here. And that's a sales tactic that's been used forever and continues to be used. In a more transparent world, what I think works much better is the completely honest, straightforward approach of, hey, listen, there's a ton of information out there. I will distill all of this down in a digestible way for you so that you can make the absolute best decisions for your firm in the shortest amount of time invested.
I like it. Yeah, keeping it simple and really helping to raise out this, getting to the meat and potatoes. And I'm with you. I was in an era where literally it seemed like the biggest winner in any sales presentation was the printing company or Kinko's back in the day for the books that people would send out to people.
Exactly. I'd say I used to come to a meeting with, let's say, a book that could contain anywhere between 20 and 40 slides. And over the last 5 years, I would say 90% of my meetings, I come with 4 custom-made slides.
And that's all you need.
That's all you need.
I'm with you. Right to the point and making it directed towards them, which has always been a key piece.
Exactly.
Ben, this is a point that I'll get, and then I want to get a little more into you personally. Mm-hmm. The market that you're in is constantly evolving, and literally, what's amazing about Manhattan is it feels like they just keep building. There's new neighborhoods, there's new places popping up. For those who are not familiar with New York City, there's an area called Hudson Yards, which is west of, which used to be just the train yards that dumped out from Penn Station, and now is literally an entire new neighborhood.
Yeah,
it is unbelievable, and it continues to go up. I guess my question is, when things are constantly changing, is there something unique that you do at CBRE to really get a take of where things are headed? Because if you would have told me back in the early 90s that downtown would become as residential as it is and things would shift in the ways that they have, that would be totally crazy. So how do you stay on top of this, and how do you keep your clients informed with all this ever-changing information just in one city? I can't even imagine it would be in multiple cities as well.
Yeah. So I would start by saying the Hudson Yards is an incredible project, and there were some questions about, with all this new construction, are we going to fill it all up? But from a very macro view, people are moving into urban environments more than any other time in human history, and the percentage of people. And while a lot of work can be done remotely, there are certain places that are being designated as the place where people do meet and do have to work together and be in teams. And New York is clearly one of those places. So just from my vantage point, the city's never been more attractive from a global perspective. When it comes to ensuring with all this additional information that I'm up to speed and providing all the advice I can to my clients, the most important thing I would say of everything is to make sure that you know what you're not. So for example, with my practice, for the first, call it 15 years of my career, 90% of the deals that I would do were between 40th Street and 60th Street, 3rd Avenue to 7th Avenue. I was a Midtown expert because that's where my clients all wanted to be. Over the last 5+ years, with a lot of the principals of these firms moving downtown, the millennial workforce coming from downtown in Brooklyn, there's been a group of them that want to that want the Hudson Yards or Midtown South. And so what I did in those instances, and this is definitely like a sales 101 thing that I believe in super strongly, in a transparent world, you can't fake it. You can't say, hey, listen, I'm great at Midtown, but I've got a B offering for Midtown South, where I've got a good sense of it. You need to, and you can't fake it. So what I do here, and one of the benefits of working at a big firm, is in the same way that I'm a specialist in Midtown, there's a Midtown South specialist, there's a downtown specialist, there's someone in San Francisco and Greenwich and Tokyo, Singapore, Hong Kong. So wherever someone needs any expertise, I'm always a fan of, and obviously you understand it, it divides up the pie here and the money that comes in here. But if you're looking at things from a long-term perspective, the best way to grow your career over the long term is just to provide awesome A+ service always.
I love that. Love how, and that's level of specialization. Everyone loves that because they also love having that expert in hand. And it's great to basically say, listen, that I don't know, but this person does. And it's nice.
And I'm seeing that really, that I would say that's one of the biggest changes that I'm seeing, not only in my own firm, but in other firms that I interact with, is that people are choosing specialists over generalists. So before you'd say, hey, I need an attorney, and someone would say, oh, I know someone, and maybe you check a few references, and then you basically go with that person. Now, if you need a specific type of attorney, you'll go to LinkedIn, you'll find out who is the best person for the specific task that I need. Not who's the best attorney generally. Nobody cares, right? You have one thing that you need, and you want to know who the best person is for that. So what we're seeing at all of these firms is there's going to be a continued consolidation of who is doing the business. I think it will be hard for generalists over specialists to continue to maintain a big book of business, because for whatever they're doing, there's someone who does only that, focuses all their energy, time on that special thing.
We're here with Ben Friedland, who is knowledgeable, on the ball, and knows exactly where not only the real estate market is heading, but how sales in general and relating with clients are literally striving towards. Now let's talk a little bit about you, Ben. You've been listening to the show, so I love asking the question. On your off days when things aren't clicking as well, or maybe you're not winning as much business or helping your clients in the way that really matters most to them, it's not all jiving. On those off days when you have trouble thriving, who or what practice do you seek to get back on the thriving track?
Good question. Well, first of all, I have a partner that I run the alternative investments group with. So it's not that I'm looking to him for support. If he feels like I'm not pushing myself, he'll jump right in and tell me to push myself and start thriving again. He meditates. I haven't found the ability to do that. I'd say the biggest thing for me is exercise always gets my head right. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big morning guy. I'm a big believer in win the morning, win the day. If you start off a day in a great spot, if you got a good workout in, then you're starting the day off where the snowball's rolling down the hill and it's gaining momentum. I find when I start my days off poorly or get up late, I'm catching up all day to try to get to my normal state.
I like it. All right. Ben, a question that someone once asked me to ask a guest. This actually happened. I was out last night to someone that listens to the program, and they said, if you ever get an opportunity to ask this, and it was geared more towards a lot of the younger listeners, people who are entering the workforce or trying to figure out what to do. What word of advice would you give someone that's looking to enter into a market as competitive as yours, specifically the real estate market? Because it is a challenge, and you've had a lot of experience. What words of advice would you give to someone, the younger version of yourself, if you would, that you wish you could have said to yourself back then that you now know now?
Yeah. So at this career stage, I do a lot of coffees with people and people's kids who want to get into real estate. So I'm often talking to 21 and 22-year-olds and giving them this kind of guidance. So I do have some things that I have thought about over time. So here's a few. The first one I would say is, again, in a transparent world, there is a problem with a rookie effectively calling on people to say, hey, can I be your advisor for real estate? Who wants to hire someone who's never done it before, right? Mm-hmm. So there's an inherent problem there. So the first thing that I would say is, no matter what you're doing, you need to latch yourself onto something credible, something that you're genuinely enthusiastic about, that you feel is a service offering or something that is of value to others. So for me, I got very fortunate early in my career. I met a woman named Mary Ann Ty. I always joke she's the LeBron James of real estate. And right from the start, I believed in her, and I was able to work with her, understand how she did what she did, and over the years build up my own book of business and have my own credibility. So that's one, latch onto something credible. Number two, there's one thing I always loved, a guy named Scott Adams. He's the Dilbert cartoonist. He predicted Trump was going to win very early and just has his own way of looking at things. What he advises in this arena is if you can have two talents that overlap and make yourself unique by having a unique skill set of several talents. Or a guy, Naval Ravikant, who I love, the angel philosopher, as he says, no one's better at being you than you are, right? So you need to figure out what are the things that you're good at, and if you can have some overlap. Like, so for me, there was the relationship aspect of this that I was able to marry with my geekiness love of technology. And that really springboarded for me. It just really amped up my own practice. I would say you want to stay away from things. Data is becoming more accessible. So what is happening is it's really all about judgment. You want to get to a role where you're looked to for your judgment, not for your labor. That's how you set up a nice lifestyle for yourself. And then you must be value add all the time. So what I would say is it is a military strategy too. You start small. So for me in my business, there was a building, 712 Fifth Avenue, that the first few years of my career, I would just walk that building all the time. And I became an expert on that building. I knew it better than anybody else did. And then I walked 717 Fifth Avenue, and I just grew from there, like a military operation that solidifies an area and then expands the solidified area. And unless you become an expert where things come to you, you will always be out soliciting. And that's not where you want to be as a long-term salesperson. You want to be in a position where you're known as an expert in something, and that people then come to you for that expertise.
I love it. First of all, I'd like to thank you for creating a future minisode about pieces of wisdom to do down the road, and those great nuggets in there, Ben. That was awesome.
My pleasure.
Ben, give all the places, the plugs that people can connect to you, connect to CBRE. This is your chance to give the social media, this is where you can find me section. And our listeners it always comes out great. We'll put it all in the show notes, but it's also better coming from you.
Great. So my company bio is cbre.com/Ben Friedland. But you can find me on all the social networks. I'm certainly on LinkedIn. My group, the Alternative Investments Practice, has an Instagram handle, CBRE_AIP. So if anyone wants to see sort of what's happening in the high-end New York City real estate world, this is a great place to just get some visuals and updates that way. I do have a Twitter handle, but it's mostly personal stuff. I really use Twitter to intake information. I'm not really sending things out there. But you can find me. Type in Ben Friedland. There's one other Ben Friedland who's a reporter in Denver. You can find him, but I think there's just two of us, and you'll find me.
It's great stuff. So we're gonna address the signature Thrive Loud question here to wrap up our conversation with Ben in a very unique way. The Thrive Loud fans need to know that before the guest comes on, they know that I do ask certain questions, and this one is always out there. And I like to sometimes ask the guests what their solutions are, what their favorite movie is. This is really interesting because Ben came back with 2 movies and 2 television series. So if you could share with the listeners all of them, if you remember what they are, I'll help hint them out as to what your favorite movies and what your favorite television series are and why. Let's go through the names first.
Yeah, well, I'll give one sort of pre-answer before I give it, which is that one of the pieces of advice that I give to young people is the filters that you set up are the most important things you can possibly do. And that there's so much information out there, whether it's podcasts, what to read every day, what movies to see, what shows to watch, and figuring out what shows you're going to spend during your free time is actually really important. And I find that people don't spend the time to set these things up where they make sure that they're getting the absolute best content. So, I would suggest doing that. So for me, I'm trying to remember what I said to you. Certainly my 2 favorite TV shows of all time are The Wire and Breaking Bad.
That's correct.
And I'm just a massive fan. I probably watched The Wire 10 times all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was amazing. For movies, there hasn't been a movie in recent years that I loved. I'd say I loved a lot of the ones that I, sort of from my childhood, like Goodfellas, Shawshank Redemption. I loved. What was the other one that I put in for movies?
You put in Fargo, which was obviously another classic, but you put Shawshank and Fargo.
Yeah, although actually it's funny, Fargo, which the movie was great, but they just came out over the last few years with a TV show for Fargo. Yep.
Right.
That I thought the first season was completely underrated, excellent. In my top group of shows that people haven't seen.
And I guess the question I'll have, and we'll keep it to those, The Wire and Breaking Bad. What is it about those programs, I guess, that connects the most with you?
So I really felt like Breaking Bad was just unbelievable drama. So it was just super entertaining. Whereas The Wire, I found unbelievably educational. And the key theme from that is called agency theory, which is that in large organizations, people's individual goals do not always match up with the larger organization's goals. So whether it's the school system, the police, the press, or politics, you see over and over again how people's personal interests do not align with the larger interests. And right. It was one of these things that once I understood that, once I saw it play out in so many different ways in the show, it really helped me understand the world better. And even when I'm out pitching business and meeting with people, I'm thinking, A, how do I help the company? And B, how do I help the person who is sitting right across from me? What's important to them specifically, maybe not for the operation? Do they need to shine in this role? The real estate's going to be looked at very critically from everyone in the organization. So for them to hear from someone like me, I understand the pressure on you here and what you need and what's required from you internally. And I'm saying I can make this process great for you, and you will look like a star internally at the end of this because we're going to have a great outcome. And that really is born from The Wire and understanding that people have individual motivations outside of their firms. I like it. And for those that have not seen The Wire or Breaking Bad, which would you believe there are people that haven't, you can access all that as well. And they draw you in. And what's great about specifically The Wire is a lot older time-wise, and it still holds true. And I think that's always really great when shows do that. So, yeah, all right. Absolutely. We got off the movie brigade a little bit, but I like it. And this was a lot of fun. Ben, excellent information, great stuff, and continued success to you. And in one of the most competitive spaces, to be able to continue to stir the pot, kudos to you. I know our listeners learned a lot from your points and specifically the way that you approach the sales process, I think is great. So thank you so much for sharing that with the Thrive Live community. Thanks so much for having me on, and keep up the great work. Really enjoying listening to you.
And that's great. And thanks again. And to all our Thrive Lab listeners out there, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
I'm not going to debate you, Jerry. Okay. I'm not going to sit here and debate.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Thrive Loud. Or find us on the web at thriveloud.com.